Hey everybody, this is Willow, and I'm working to help people to wake up. Um, this is a remake of a previous video I made. I made one earlier about the Morgellons disease in the scalp, and uh, when I watched it, it got uploaded, and I realized there was some mistakes on it, and I wanted to edit it. And to be honest with you folks, sometimes video pad works good for me, and then other times it don't. Sometimes it's just a flop. So sometimes it's best for me to just make a whole new video. So this is a remake of the previous one. Try to correct some of the mistakes in it. But um, what I want to talk about is Morgellons disease in the scalp. Now, I think this is important because the scalp, I believe, is the central location for Morgellons. Now, I'll explain what I mean by that. Because when the first symptoms of Morgellons started with me, and most people say this, most people say that it's the same thing, that it started in the scalp region. But for me, it started out like uh, a pulsing in the scalp, or like a vibration or energy in the scalp, and just weird scalp sensations. And then later on, it turned into an intense crawling sensation in the scalp. It's like the scalp was just, it's like my scalp came alive, and there was just crawling and constant crawling in the scalp. So right away, like most people, I thought, well, I've caught headlights, or there's something in my head. So I went through headlight shampoo. I don't even know how many bottles, and it didn't seem to work. The crawling was still in my scalp, and I used sulfur shampoos. I used pine tar shampoos. I mean, I used anything I could find to, you know, to stop whatever this crawling was, but nothing seemed to work. And so, since it seemed to be localized in the scalp area, um, I started soaking my scalp in the bathtub. I would run a bathtub full of hot water as hot as I could stand. I would just sometimes I'd use a whole box of baking soda in the water. Sometimes I'd use a couple of Epsom salt or whatever I had. You know, sometimes I would put disinfectant in the water or whatever I had on hand. And then I would lay back in the tub and soak my scalp, for sometimes for an hour, I don't know. But the more I soaked it, it seemed like the worse the crawling grew. I mean, the crawling seemed like it got more intense, and the sensations in the scalp got more intense. But I continued with the scalp treatments because um, of what was coming out of my scalp. Because I know it didn't happen right away. I think it was probably a couple days after soaking my scalp that I started noticing this white fungus coming out of my scalp, and this mucus, sticky like goo-like stuff coming out of the scalp. There was things that looked like insects. There was the little white sand, sand particles, the black sand particles, and the little black things that looked kind of like rice. All that was coming out in the fibers, and then eventually the sores. Because I noticed right after the fungus and everything started coming out, and the fibers and things, then the sores started developing in the scalp. And so there was just, oh, the activity in the scalp was just unbelievable. It was unbelievable. It's mind blowing. So the fact that there was something coming out, it caused me to continue with the scalp soakings. But of course, then later on, the whole body started experiencing the same symptoms, and then my body, my arms, I noticed my arms, my legs, and my chest, and my entire body started having the same crawling sensations and the same vibrations in it. It started out with feeling like something was jumping off my body, like fleas or something was jumping off, and I couldn't see anything, and then of course, uh, the fungus and the fibers and the little sand particles and everything started coming out of my whole body. And so instead of just focusing on my head region, I was now having to focus on soaking everything, my head, my whole body in the tub. And this meant that I spent longer hours in the tub. But the main point I wanted to make was the symptoms, though. The first symptoms started in the scalp. And most people that I talk to say the same thing. Yeah, it started with crawling in the scalp. It started with crawling around in the scalp. So that's what makes me believe that that's the central location for Morgellons. It starts in the scalp region. Okay, now there's something that I wanted to point out. Now, this doesn't mean that everybody's going to have this. This doesn't mean that everybody with Morgellons is going to have this same thing that I found in my scalp. So I don't want, I'm not trying to say that this is the case for everybody, because it's not. I mean, it's most likely it's not. But I did, after doing my scalp soakings or my body soakings for a couple of months, I remember one particular night I was in the tub and I felt a stinging. I felt the stinging sensation in the back of my head increase. Now, there's always stinging and crawling and itching with Morgellons all the time, but this was more intense than I had been experiencing at the back of my head. Now, what I'm talking about is right above that hollow place of the neck, where the hollow place of the neck is, right where the brainstem, connects to the spine. There's a hollow place there, about 2 inches above that hollow place. This is where the stinging was, and it was more intense than usual. So when I put my hand back there, I could feel it, and I felt something that felt like something was kind of hanging loose, and I pulled it, and it was so weird and so bizarre. I mean, it was about 2 or 3 inches long, and it maybe an inch wide, and it looked like a hive. It actually looked like a beehive. Now I couldn't tell. I didn't examine it close enough to tell what was in it or anything. I just, at the time, I thought it was just some more weird skin, because I had been pulling a lot of weird skin off of my scalp and off other parts of my body. And keep in mind, this was back in 1999, is when I was stricken with Morgellons. And at that time, there was no internet. There was no YouTube. There was no Facebook. And I didn't have internet. Let's see, there may have been internet, but I didn't have it. Okay, I didn't have internet. So, I didn't take any pictures of it, but I do remember putting it in a Ziploc bag and keeping it. But for some reason, I'm not able to find it. I don't know if I left it with the dermatologist that I visited, or if they threw it away, or I don't know if somehow it's been misplaced in the house. I don't know. But anyway, it's disappeared. But to me at the time, like I said, at the time, I dismissed it as being just some weird skin that I pulled off my body. But now I'm kind of wondering, since it was located in that specific area, which is above the brainstem, I'm wondering now if it didn't have a more specific purpose. Of course, I'm not, like I said, I'm not saying everybody's implanted with this above their brainstem. I'm not saying that because I don't even know that it's an implant. But what I do know is that it could have had an effect on the brain dysfunction it could have been the cause of the brain dysfunction that I was having, or, and some other problems that I was having, because I know the brainstem is pretty much the control center for the central nervous system and the body. It controls the messages from the brain to the rest of the body. It controls the breathing. It controls swallowing. It controls blood pressure, heart rate, and it controls a lot of things in the body, and it also controls your sleep pattern, whether you're being asleep and awake. So I don't know. This is just my theory. I don't know, but I'm wondering now if it wasn't some kind of implant, that was planted there at some time, and that was actually meant to control me, control the mind, control the body. But anyway, I'm just putting that out there. Like I said, it's just my theory. But people need to know these things. I mean, and there may not be anything to any of it, but still, people need to know these things that about. They need to know what's happening to people with Morgellons, because Morgellons is so deep and so complex, we just can't figure it out. But to me, in my opinion, Morgellons starts in the scalp. The control center for Morgellons to me is, as far as I'm concerned, is in the scalp. So, because that's where the symptoms start, and that's where the symptoms start for most people. So that's my theory. That's what I believe. So it's important, if you have Morgellons, maybe your symptoms didn't start in the scalp. I don't know. Maybe they did. But either way, you need to be soaking your scalp or treating your scalp with something to make sure that you remove the fungus, not only from the scalp but the body too. I mean, the body, as you know, the whole body is affected by Morgellons. So the scalp and the whole body needs to be treated. Now there may be some new treatments, for doing that, but for me it was bathtub soakings every day for at least an hour in the bathtub with Epsom salt in my water, baking soda in my water. Sometimes I use pine salt in my water, or whatever kind of disinfectant, because it was the disinfectant or the Epsom salt and all that caused the fungus and all the fibers and stuff to come to the surface. And then when it comes to the surface, then it's coming out. It's coming out of your body. The same thing happened in the scalp. The white fungus started coming out first, then the fibers, then the little salt crystals, and the little black specks, and little brown looking things, and the little bugs that look like bugs. All this was coming out of my scalp after I started doing the scalp soakings in the tub. And then, of course, the sores, all the sores broke out too. So that's all I want to say about it, folks, just to make people aware, just to kind of share my story and share what happened, and get this information out there for those who might be suffering from Morgellons. There might be some new people who have just started having these symptoms and they don't know what's going on, and our stories can help them. So that's all I want to say. Thanks, folks.